Pest management is a crucial part of flower farming, yet it is not discussed enough because it lacks the glamour usually associated with our beautiful world of flowers. But pest pressure can definitely feel overwhelming because you don't want your baby plants to go to waste after you've worked so hard to start them from seed and get them in the ground. So it can be tempting to resort to chemicals in order to fix the pest issues. But there are very effective organic means of dealing with pests, and in this video I'm going to cover the pest management practices that I have adopted on my small flower farm that help with minimizing pest pressure without spraying poison into our precious soil. I should start by saying that prevention is key when it comes to pest management. Each flower has specific growing needs when it comes to spacing, watering, temperature, light, soil quality, and so growing conditions will influence a plant's level of health. If it doesn't have what it needs to grow into a strong plant, it will produce stress hormones that will signal to pests that it cannot defend itself, and so the plant will attract pests all by itself. Last year I had rust on my snapdragons because I overcrowded them in their bed. I started more seeds than I could actually fit in the allocated bed as a buffer for a potentially poor germination rate, and the thought of composting the excess seedlings was breaking my heart. Do you ever experience this irrational affection towards baby plants? I definitely do, so I planted all of them at less than 4-inch spacing, which is less than 10 centimeters, and they got rust because I didn't keep on top of cutting stems from them. Typically, if you grow flowers for cutting, they can be planted more tightly provided you keep cutting from them to increase airflow among the stems. In many cases, nature finds its balance and plants fight pests on their own. An example here would be lilies. Slugs munch on the lilies when they first come out of the ground in spring, and the leaves are still very young and tender. But these awesome flowers put on growth and toughen up so quickly that the slugs cannot keep up. Your approach to pest management will depend on what types of pests are prevalent in your area. Here in Warwickshire, UK, I've had a lot of slugs, aphids, rust and scarlet lily beetles. It's important to note that not all insects are harmful. Things like lacewings, hoverflies and ladybirds are natural predators of many insects and insect eggs, so they are considered beneficial insects. Also, you want to make sure that pollinators are not affected by your pest control measures either. So, which are the pests affecting flowers? I will cover some of the most common ones, highlighting some ways in which they can be managed. I haven't been able to find free pictures to use in this video, and I've only managed to find a few pests in my planting beds at this time of year. But it's best to look them up online and save pictures of the different pests to help you identify them a little easier. Slugs and snails nibble on young flower leaves and they can really have an appetite. What I've found to be working very well is allowing the affected plants to grow larger indoors or in a protective environment like a greenhouse, or even an elevated surface where it's harder for slugs to reach. As the plants grow larger, not only are they better able to find the pests on their own and regenerate quicker, but also they are no longer so vulnerable to pests as their outer protective tissues get tougher and harder to attack. In my case, slugs went for dahlias, lilies and rudbeckias, but had no interest in flowers like snapdragons, scabiosa, yarrow, zinnias, foxgloves or strawflowers. Knowing this is important because it helps me determine which flowers can be planted into the ground as young seedlings and which need to be grown in pots for a little longer before transplanting. Very effective remedies for slugs and snails include encouraging hedgehogs on your property as well as ducks or birds in general that also love to eat slugs. I personally dug a small ditch beneath the fence to allow hedgehogs to move freely in and out. This works for me because I don't have rabbits or other rodents in my area, which is why it's important that you assess which methods would work for you in your circumstances. Aphids are very common. They are soft-bodied, fragile insects that feed on the sap of young growth, specifically at the tips of the plants, and I often find them on my rosebuds when they are still in the early stages. Blasting them off with a water hose usually works for me, as most aphids cannot survive on the ground. If they are more established, I just repeat this for a few days until they go away, and I do it in the early mornings or late evenings because splashing water onto the plants in the middle of the day when the sun is too bright can lead to leaf burn. Thrips are one of the most destructive insects, affecting lots of different flowers. As soon as thrips damage has been identified, all damaged and infested leaves should be removed from the plant, sealed in a bag and thrown away in the general waste bin to prevent them from spreading further. Thrips can also be managed by encouraging beneficial insects onto the flower patches to control their population, and this is done by planting a diversity of flowers that provide pollen and nectar to those beneficial insects. Beetles like the Japanese beetle and the scarlet lily beetle are large enough to be hand-picked and removed off the plants, and I just put on a pair of gloves and get hunting. Generally, beneficial insects and birds will help control the populations of all sorts of destructive bugs, including not just thrips, but whiteflies, spider mites, flea beetles, aphids, and so on. Powdery mildew, mold, rust, and leaf spot. All of these are fungal issues that are often associated with high humidity and poor ventilation around the plants. Powdery mildew can be in full swing even during hot, dry days, as nighttime humidity is enough for it to thrive. Preventative measures and remedies for fungal issues include removing the affected leaves as soon as the fungal disease is identified and disposing of them in the waste bin, watering at the base of the plant to avoid splashing water over the leaves, and improving airflow by spacing plants adequately and removing bottom foliage if possible. In a nutshell, here are the tips that generally work for me on most types of pests. I scout for pests from the beginning of spring so I can identify them early when they are easier to manage. It's easier to remove a couple of bugs than it is to deal with an entire colony. Checking and removing pests regularly should be integrated into the flower care routine the same way weeding does, to ensure we can keep it under control before it blows out of proportion. Another thing I do is I remove the affected leaves or flowers and I allow the plant to reset. I allow certain flowers like dahlias and rudbeckias to grow a bit larger indoors before transplanting. I plant a variety of flowers that attract pollinators as well as other beneficial insects that prevent parasites from spreading. I encourage birds and hedgehogs onto my property to snack on those slugs and insects. I follow spacing recommendations for each variety, and if I plant them closer together, I aim to stay on top of harvesting stems to increase that airflow. I try to avoid watering the leaves and I amend the soil with organic composts and fertilizers to ensure the plants have the nutrients and biostimulation they need to stay strong and healthy. I've also started to practice cover cropping, which is a great regenerative practice for the soil with amazing benefits. I've recently posted a video where I briefly touch upon how I approach soil amendments. If you've missed it, I will link it for you in the description below. I practice companion planting, which I have found to be very effective in preventing these issues altogether. Some plants naturally repel and confuse pests. Examples include marigolds, onions, garlic, basil, thyme. All of these have a scent to them that keeps pests at bay, and introducing these around the edges of your planting beds helps shield your vulnerable flowers too. Another example is nasturtium. This can attract pests away from your other crops as opposed to repelling them, which is used as a sacrificial plant for the benefit of your cat flowers. It is important to mention here that composting plants that have been affected by such diseases is not recommended, as the compost may not heat to a high enough temperature to kill off those plants, which could result in you adding them back into the soil when you use that compost. Instead, like I already mentioned, plant material that's been affected has to be disposed of in a sealed bag straight into the waste bin to prevent pests from spreading further. Another practice I adopt is I rotate flowers as much as possible. Perennials are more difficult to move around, but it's good practice to plant annuals in different beds every year, as planting them in the same bed encourages pests to establish there. Plant rotation also prevents the beds from getting depleted of certain types of nutrients too, so this is another great thing you can do for the soil. When you approach pest control organically, you have to be prepared to put in the effort, as, just like with most aspects of life, doing the right thing for the soil requires some compromise. Organic fixes take longer, but if we stay consistent, our methods will eventually help nature regain its balance. Getting to enjoy flowers is a privilege, and it shouldn't come at a cost to our soil, as I feel it steals away from the beauty of our flowers. This brings us to the end of the video. Thanks a lot for sticking till the end, and please make sure to subscribe and let me know your thoughts and questions in the comment section below, as I know there's a lot to unpack. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and share the video with flower-loving friends of yours who might also find value in the content I create. I'll see you soon.